Hi folks, Toad here with Visordown.com, and we have been buzzing around on Honda's latest 2020 CRF1100L Africa Twin for the last few days. It's the adventure sports model that you should be able to see over my shoulder there. So we've done quite a bit with it. We've been doing some motorway touring. We've also gone to the Honda Adventure Centre down in Somerset to have a little play on the bike with Dave Thorpe and his mates, which has been all good, and there's a full video and written editorial coming on site soon, so you can read all about that. But in the meantime, we posted to social media asking you to fire us your questions for the Africa Twin, and we would do our best to answer them. So without further ado, and before I go any further, if I get your name wrong, I'm ever sorry. Question number one, Tony Amos: how does the 1100 compare to the 2018 1000cc? Okay, well, the biggest difference that I noticed was that the power to weight ratio has increased by 10%, and you do definitely feel that on the road. Aside from the weight reduction that's gone on, the electronics have been updated. They're a lot slicker, the DCT works better, the traction control and cornering ABS, the traction control and the ABS will run through the 6-axis IMU, which is really very slick. I noticed that a lot off-road. The ABS system, even on the slickest of slick mud and deep clay, was still absolutely faultless, which was really very impressive. You notice the weight reduction as well when you're moving the bike around. When you get the bike off the stand and think about how the old bike used to feel, you notice it straight away, and it really does pay dividends when you're riding the bike slowly and trying to navigate traffic and things like that. So the weight reductions had an effect on the performance of the bike in terms of the power to weight ratio, but it's actually also had a positive effect on how the bike rides on a day-to-day basis, because not everybody lives their life on the trails, so to speak. So this one comes from Steve Moriarty, and it's a very good question. And he said, what RPM is it spinning at 70 mph in top gear? And on the way back from the Honda Adventure Centre yesterday, I spent most of the journey in top just trying to conserve some fuel, so I had loads of time to sort of analyse this. But 70 mph in sixth, you're going to be doing about 3,750 RPM, and the onboard computer is telling you that you're returning between 65 to 70 mpg, which is pretty good. There is very little in the way of vibration to speak of at that speed. The old bike wasn't particularly vibey either, and actually, when I think about it, the new bike doesn't really vibrate at any speeds. Everything's rubber damped, and it's very smooth and very civilized and very nice place to be. Also, I want to add that at 70 on cruise control, for instance, you're still sat nicely in the fat part of the torque curve, so the bike revs on all the way past 8,000 just about. So at about 4,000 RPM, you've still got plenty of torque left, that if you do need to crank it on and get an overtake done, there is absolutely more than enough poke in there for you to be able to do that. So Spencer ELVER on Facebook, why is the centre stand not a standard feature? It's a good question. A lot of people have asked this, and Honda haven't given me a definitive answer as to why. The general gist is that in keeping with the bike's adventure aesthetic and the style and the look of an adventure bike, not a tourer, because tourers generally do come with a centre stand, but an adventure bike, they ditched it. It might also be something to do with keeping the bike at a viable price point. The centre stand is 205 quid fitted at a Honda dealer, so it's not a lot of money. But you know what it is, when they build a bike like this, it's on an accountant's spreadsheet, everything the bike's going to get, and there are going to be some things on there that the accountant is going to end up cutting in favour of other things that are deemed to be more popular to the buyer. Steve Welder, he wrote, why is it £5,000 more than the new V-Strom 1050? Okay, well, first things first, the new V-Strom 1050 is not exactly a new V-Strom 1050. It's a bit of a facelift bike that's had some upgrades thrown at it, but if you look at the general architecture of the bike in terms of the frame and the engine can trace its roots back probably 15 years, so it's not a new bike by any stretch of the imagination. And as bikes get longer and longer in the tooth, and the development cost of making that bike get further and further away, the upgrades that the incremental upgrades along that bike's lifeline, they kind of become smaller and smaller, more insignificant and cheaper for the manufacturer to implement. I also want to say that the Africa Twin isn't £5,000 more than the V-Strom 1050. There is an Africa Twin in the range which is £13,049. So it's not £5,000, that's £3,000 more than the V-Strom that you're quoting, but also that's only if you go for the 999 V-Strom. There is the XT version of the V-Strom which is 11299, but we're getting into semantics anyway. The main reason is technology and specification. I know that the V-Strom's had some stuff chucked at it. It's got electronics, it's got riding modes, it's got all that sort of stuff. But with the Africa Twin, you're getting a touchscreen TFT, which works with winter gloves on, motocross gloves on. It works in the rain. It rained a lot yesterday at the Honda Adventure Centre, and it worked faultlessly. It's a really, really cool system. You get Apple CarPlay, you've got the cruise control, cornering, ABS, 6 riding modes that you can tailor all of them to your needs. It's got the traction control working through the IMU, wheelie control, it's got gravel modes, it's got so much stuff going on that you don't get with the V-Strom. So if you're going to compare like for like, compare a bike that is absolutely like on spec, and to me, the V-Strom isn't on the same level as the Africa Twin in terms of the spec and the level of technology that it's got on it. The next question that's been asked is probably my favourite question of anybody's, and it was from James Jerome, and it was what would you choose, the new CB500X or the Africa Twin, which I thought was brilliant. If I was looking for something that would rarely go more than 100 miles and that I wanted to commute on and hack on and not go very far, but I definitely wanted it to go off-road, sorry Honda, I'd go for the CB500, because I think that thing, it looks a hoot on the road and off it. It's so light in comparison, and I'm only very little, and it will be able to do everything the Africa Twin can do. It just won't be able to do it at such great distance. If I was a larger person, taller, heavier, then I'd be opting for the Africa Twin, because it would be more manageable for me off-road. You get the bigger tank with the Africa Twin, which equals more range, and it can carry more weight, and you can go up further and travel distance. But for me personally, and if that was my scenario and I wanted to definitely do some off-road work, but I wasn't looking at doing massive European tours, I'd probably go for the CB500X and leave the £4 or £5 left in my back pocket. Angus Tickner, I don't know, are you a bit angry? You've put, why are they so expensive? Why such big heavy engines, and why don't they have better sized fuel tanks? Okay, well, first off, big adventure bikes need big engines. 1100cc for a full-size adventure bike, actually in today's climate, it's not really a big engine. You've got KTM, BMW, Ducati, they're all pushing 1300cc. So actually, the 1100cc of the Africa Twin, if you talk about full-size adventure bikes, is a bit of a lightweight. Also, the Africa Twin manual engine for this year, so not the DCT version that I'm riding, the manual version has shed 2.5 kilos over the old bike, so the engine's actually got quite a lot lighter. So there's a lot of internal work that's gone on to help that happen. If you look at the DCT, that as well has shrunk, and that's it's lost 2.2 kilos in weight. I mean, these kind of high-tech, big adventure motorcycles, they're all ever evolving beasts, and they only get better and better and better. The first generation Africa Twin of the modern era, it was the first generation of the bike, so things will only get lighter and smaller and better packaged from there on. Just on I found this question quite funny. On the part about the fuel tank, the base Africa Twin has got a 19 litre fuel tank, so that's not the Adventure Sport, that's the slightly smaller one. It's got a 19 litre fuel tank, which if you ride it conservatively has got to be good for 230, 240 miles. If you go for the Adventure Sports, it's got a 24.8 litre tank, so it's nearly a 25 litre tank, which again, if you ride it conservatively, you're going to be getting 300 miles out of that tank easy. They could make the tank bigger, and they could make the tank carry more capacity, but then that would make the bike heavier, and the weight of the bike was your first argument, so I don't really know where you're going with that one. Simon Hood, is it under 200 kilograms? Well, you can go on the internet and find out the answers for this, but I'll let you know, it's not quite. The base Africa Twin comes in at 226 for the manual model and 236 for the DCT, so that's about 10 kgs to that one. The Africa Twin Adventure Sport which is the one that you can see over my shoulder, the daddy of the range is coming in at 238 kilograms for the manual and 248 for the DCT version. Having ridden both, you don't feel that difference as much as it sounds on paper. So it sounds like you're going to get on the thing and the Adventure Sport is going to immediately feel cumbersome and heavy, and it doesn't. It's not. I only rode the smaller one off-road at the Honda Adventure Centre just purely because I preferred the smaller, lighter, nimbler model, because the conditions were absolutely torrid. It was thick clay, mud, really deep, really slippy, and I just didn't fancy picking up the big old Adventure Sport every 5 seconds when I dropped it. Just want to add to that last question that the weights that we're stating there are the claimed Honda weights, which are curb weights, so will be with all of the oil and coolant, with a battery and enough fuel to ride it, but probably not a full tank. So Colin Organ posted, does it make every day feel like an adventure, as in the commute to work? Yeah, kind of. Riding anything this big is going to feel like an adventure. You've got such a commanding position of the road, and it's an adventurous bike. I mean, you basically look at any terrain and you think, yeah, this could probably handle it. And that's something that I learnt from the riding at the off-road adventure centre yesterday, was that if you look at it, and it can do it in the right hands and with the right amount of confidence, ability and skill, it can pretty much get up anything that a 450 enduro bike could. There's one thing that I want to add to that, and this came to me on the ride back from the Adventure Centre back to Coventry. I decided to go off-piste and take the twisty roads and not sit on the motorway all day, because I hadn't really done much scratching on it. And this is one thing that I think Honda have really missed in all of the marketing material for this bike. It's focused on the adventure side of it, and it's such a bloody good road bike. In the way that it handles, it's actually quite quick. I mean, it's got just over 100 horsepower there or thereabouts, but it can really push on a twisty road. And even the Bridgestone pseudo adventure off-road tyres, you wouldn't want to actually go off-road on them. A dusty track would be fine, but as a road tyre, they're actually all right. They've got plenty of grip, they heat up, you've got loads of feel, they can handle it if there's a load of cow shit strewn over the road. So they're actually a good all-round tyre, not just an adventure bike tyre. And you'd think with that big huge 21-inch front wheel, you think that it's going to be you think it handles so slowly and be so cumbersome, and it's actually not. It's really light to ride, and you can really get stuck into a decent twisty road on it. Is it a sports tourer? Absolutely not in any case, but it could probably keep up with some in the right hands. So Niall Mackie wanted to know, what are the typical servicing costs? Couldn't find out exactly, but I spoke to a Honda dealer who said as a ballpark figure you'd be looking at around 120 to 130 for the standard bike, i.e. not the DCT. The DCT would be slightly more, and that's only because in the DCT there is a separate oil system and a separate oil filter that needs updating, changing and replenishing. But sort of I would gather it'd be between 150 and 175 quid for the DCT on that basis. But speak to your local Honda dealer if you want to find that out. Harrison Blakeburn wanted to know what sort of range it is getting on long rides, so A and B roads. Right, I've had the bike for about 4 or 5 days now of riding. I've completed about 500 miles on it, and that has been a proper full-on mix of every type of road really. So I've got A roads, B roads, motorways, dual carriageways, even single track roads that have had sort of like, you know, farmer's muckle thrown down the middle of them. At the moment, the onboard computer is showing that I've been averaging 52.8 miles per gallon, which is pretty good, and that's at an average speed of about 45 miles an hour over the 500 miles that I've been riding the bike for. I did do an M.P.H test on the bike manually by brimming the tank, doing 100 miles and then brimming the tank again to see how much brimming the tank again and working out my mileage that way. And the onboard computer is actually bob on, so it's not optimistic or it's not under optimistic. By my calculation, it was actually absolutely spot on. just want to add to that, this bike's only got 1,000 miles on it, so while the engine isn't brand new, it has been running, it's still a new motor by every respect, and it's probably going to loosen up over the time, and there might be a little bit more MPG to come out of that one. So Rob Wicks wanted to know, am I riding the automatic or the manual? It's not called an automatic, don't say that to Honda because they get really annoyed. It's a DCT or the manual, and I've been testing the DCT and the the DCT on-road and the manual bike off-road. So first off, giving me the DCT bike was actually a really good test for it, because I've ridden DCT bikes before and I've never got on with them. I've always thought they changed gear at the wrong time, they changed gear too early, mid-corner, which was always a bit of a bum clencher, and I just thought the system was a bit clunky, and was it answering a question that nobody had asked. I'm still not 100% sold on it. I still have my reservations, and while I have the use of my left hand and my left foot, I don't know if there's a place in my garage for a DCT motorcycle. But I've got to say, this latest system is the best functioning and the slickest system that I've ridden, and it also actually makes the most sense on a bike like the Africa Twin. So the new DCT system on this bike is linked up to the IMU, and it knows whether you're leaning over, it knows whether you're going uphill, downhill, etc. So they've kind of eradicated the early gear changes mid-corner that used to make the bike push on a little bit, which was never a nice feeling. And also the old DCT system, when you were using the engine braking going down a hill, you'd use the engine braking for a minute, and then the engine would think that you're okay and you needed to change back up into third, and you just start accelerating down a hill, which was never good. So that's kind of all gone, and the bike does hold on to gears when you're engine braking until the surface levels out, and then it will, change up automatically, or you can just change up again. So it is the best DCT system I've ridden. But the problem for me with relying on zeros and ones and algorithms to do things that we normally do, especially on motorcycles, is that until you can plug a motorcycle into the back of your head like you're on the Matrix and let it read your mind, it's always going to change gear when it thinks you want to change gear, not when you want to change gear. And until that becomes a thing, then it's always going to be slightly out of sync, it's always going to be slightly different. But you get it when you're driving an automatic car, it's just not such an issue. When you're driving a bike, it kind of becomes an issue. But yeah, DCT, it's the best system I've ridden. I still think there's a few generations to go before it becomes the best it can be. Alexander Chatterley wanted to know why they've made it so expensive, and why they've put it in a price point where it competes with the R1250 GS, the Tiger 1200 and the KTM 1290 Super Adventure. Can it compete with those, and do you get the same tech quality features as those other machines? The problem is that you're only really looking at the pinnacle of the Africa Twin range. There is the base model, which is cheaper. I know it's still around the price point of the base model GS and Tiger 1200 and the KTM 1290 Adventure. But in my mind, it's not really about whether it's competing with bikes that have got bigger engines. It's just another adventure bike that you can choose. It's just a different style of adventure bike that uses an 1100cc parallel twin, and if you want it, a DCT gearbox. Can it compete with them? Yeah, of course it can. I mean, you could take, like I said earlier in the video, you could take a CB500X and it could do all of the things that the Africa Twin and the 1290 Super Adventure and the Tiger 1200, it could do all the things that they do, and probably some more, because it's more light and more nimble. It's just a case of what people want from their adventure bike. And if you're looking for a DCT adventure bike where you don't have to ever change gear again if you don't want to, Honda are the only people currently that make an adventure bike that you can do that with. Has it got the same tech, high quality features as those other machines? Yeah, in my mind, it's got all the electronics under the sun. You've got a touchscreen TFT dash, which I'm not sure all of the others do. If you go for the pinnacle of the Africa Twin range, you can even opt for the ES version. It's got electronic suspension. Yeah, it can compete, and it's not that it's competing with bikes that are out of its class because it's only 1100cc. It's just a different adventure bike that you can go and choose if you want to choose a Honda adventure bike. So there we have it, your questions answered. Do let us know if we've missed anything, which we probably have, and you probably will. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep following Visordown.com for all the latest news, reviews and motorcycle gossip. Thanks a lot for watching. Cheers, folks.